Hi there, my name is Kendrick, and today I get to interview Ryan. So Ryan, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Ryan, obviously. I am an INTJ jumper NIFI, and my OPS code is audio NIFI, sleep, consume, play, and blast last. My social type is not officially typed, but I'm almost certainly a social type 3. It's kind of a self type, but seems pretty accurate to me. So,
Okay, cool, man. So what did you think and how did you feel when you initially got your typing results back, it was like 2 years ago or something?
yeah, so it was in 2022, and I think almost every coin was correct. Like when I first found the OP theory stuff, I thought I might have been a savior blaster because it's kind of hard to tell as an IJ. Like the blast still feels very strong, but and I have such an aspiration to it. But I remember thinking I was a savior blaster, but then once I kind of learned more, I kind of realized I was a mope. I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. And there was no surprises when I got my type back. So it was interesting though, because I did get typed by some unofficial people first before I got my Dave and Shan results, and they all typed me as ISFP, like FISE, because I think they could sense like the unusual SE comfortability I have for an INTJ compared to the average one. So it was kind of interesting, but yeah, I'm definitely an INTJ for sure. So
Yeah, I think what I noticed about the double activate extroverted sensing for the INTJs, because my girlfriend is one, so obviously
yeah,
the same type as you pretty much, except like FF, right?
yeah, yeah,
Like the thing I noticed is like when she's consuming, she looks so stressed out because she's using her fourth function. And
yeah, yeah.
doing a lot of it because you guys have like double activated consume. But like when you're using your third and fourth function, like all the time, it does add like stress to your physical body from what I can see. Like do you see?
Yeah. So it's interesting my perspective of that because like I think over the broad context of every situation, like yes, it is definitely a lot more stressful. But in the narrow context of like, okay, this is what I really SEFI really like, it
Yeah.
actually is a flow state still. So it's like if someone else like says, hey, consume this, I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm IJ. I don't want to like I don't want to do that right now. I want to focus on my stuff. But like, yeah, it is generally stressful, even though it is a savior state consuming most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, like with my girlfriend, she'll consume the same thing over and over again, like really aggressively too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I always think I'm like, is that really consume? I mean, I understand you guys stack is
Yeah.
sleep consume, right? So it's still serving the sleep, like the consume is still serving the sleep. But then, like the definition of consume is gathering new information for self. I'm like, but if you're consuming something that's not new, is that really gathering new information for self? Or is that
Yeah.
still
It's like maybe from like an any perspective, it's like very, very trivially different. Like the SE, like it's so subtle sometimes, but like we just are obsessed with like once we get something that kind of captures the NI concept we like, we just love just constantly finding new tiny little iterations of that. Because I noticed like I want to watch Dave's channel, like he could go on for eternity, just like a new SE example of, oh, this is how this NI concept works. Like he just keeps going, and it's like over a long period of time, you see like there's not really much difference in what he's saying in a lot of these videos, but like his SE just loves like those little different examples, I think. So I kind of have a relation to that, I guess. So
I think what I'm finding with
yeah.
PS and like the SE and NI axis, because like Dave and Shan both
Mm,
have it, right? So
yeah.
much like for you, it's a gold mine because it's like, oh, this is my quadra, like
Yeah.
so like what I'm noticing with like the SENI access is like nothing happens for like 2 or 3 years, and suddenly there's like a big upgrade. Um,
Oh yeah.
that's kind of like because like the SE I think it's like slowly building up the NI, and then finally when you have all the ingredients together, suddenly like the concept becomes more solid, and then now you have like right now social type is the thing, right? So it's like boom,
Mm,
social type, right?
yeah.
Are you finding that with yourself when you're doing like the SENI axis, where it's like it's kind of like what you described earlier. You're kind of slowly gathering just micro amount of new data, and nothing's really happening until like suddenly you do have something that your
Yeah.
can like lock into.
So the way it kind of feels to me, especially with like the anti-dom addiction to guessing, is like so I'll see initial SE evidence and I can't help but like try to build a whole web of like, okay, let me just project what I think this means. And it's just like crazy. And then I get another SE and then it's just like the whole web shifts, like the whole framework just like instantly shifts. And like the way that the feminine and I works is like I almost learn what the real concept is through like embodying the opposite. So like I do it completely wrong in every way I can. And then using more SE examples, I start narrowing down like the real truth as like by eliminating all these other options. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I've always kind of seen like feminine NI and masculine SE as like fake NE, and then like I've
Yeah,
also seen like masculine NE and feminine SI to be like fake NI because like there's like a lot of like kind of overlap happening when I see
I've
them.
noticed that. Yeah,
Um, but dude, let's go over your animals. Let's start with your sleep. That's your first animal, right? So your sleep is
yeah.
NF. So you're like lead NF. You're like supposed to be a hippie and stuff. And how do you personally experience that? And like let's start with that before I jump into more questions.
Yeah, sure. So it's like obviously very vague, very ethereal. It's like because it's sleep for like I notice myself like I can't do anything in the day unless I like wake up and think like what is the point of what I'm doing? Like I'll take a shower in the morning and I'll just stand in the shower just like and just think like what is my arc? What is my point? And it like changes almost every day. Like there is a feminine and I kind of vague path, but like I never quite know what exactly the path should be. So I kind of have to re-update the sleep every single day before I even get to anything else. Like it's very, and then there's a bit of a physical element too. Like I need literally full 8 hours of sleep to like, even though it's not a sensory aspect of the sleep, like I still need like because I'm kind of blast last kind of mopey, I need like my sleep in every sense to be, both conceptually and physically to be out of the way. So then I can go to the consume and the play and the blast and stuff. It's definitely like I notice the order of the animals very clearly.
Uh,
Yeah.
just a little fun side tangent here. When I let you in the Zoom call earlier, the first thing I said to you was like, "Oh my God, dude, you look so mopey," and then
Yeah.
you told me you're like, I'm already on stimulants too,
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you describe a little bit like what your state is like right now with on stimulants versus like when you are not on stimulants, like being like a mopey, sleep consumed, double introverted person?
Yeah. So it's just like it's kind of interesting because in my head, I'm not as mopey as it always comes. Like I always look worse than I am. So anyone always sees me passing by, they're like, "Oh, you're so tired looking. You're so dead. You look so mad." I'm like, "No, I'm fine. It's just like my resting face is so bad." But I think the stimulants really it just kind of speeds up the processing a bit. Like it kind of makes me a little sharper. It helps the play a lot more. Like I'm not as when I'm really mopey when I first wake up, I just want to like just sit there. Like I don't care what the tribe's saying. Like let me just like figure this out. I don't want to really like adapt my body language to show you that I'm paying attention and stuff. Like I'll just like I don't even eye contact. Like if the stimulants helps me like be more normal social a little bit, but it's still obviously mopey. But yeah,
Right. That's funny. You get a
yeah,
resting exhausted face. That's
yeah.
okay, cool. So part of NF sleep is also having a code that you adhere to. How do you
Mhm.
personally like see that code? Like, some it takes in several forms too, right? Depending on the person, right? Like, it usually comes in a form of quote or something, but it doesn't have to, but it could be like a sentence, a paragraph, whatever. Like that's usually how I've seen it manifest. Do you have something like that, like a personal code that you kind of adhere to, or like a mantra?
Yeah, well, see, this is the problem I have just in life and everything is it exists. It's deep within me. It's very rigid within me, but like I have a really hard time articulating it. And like sometimes I need to like TE draft it 500 times for me to even know what the heck is in the black box of my like feminine eye brain.
Right.
So it's hard to like say on off cuff like what is my code? Like it's just very, like I have my FI, it is masculine, it is very rigid, but like it isn't as rigid as it isn't articulatable as easily as it is clear in my mind. So it's like I do have my passions of like what I believe FI is the right pursuits, but like it does change depending on like the F, even though the FI is very strong, like it is still lower in my stacks. Like it is augmented a lot by the NITE of like what I deem most practical. Like the practical informs the values informs the practicality. It's a double deciding kind of thing, I guess. So it is still fluid, even though it is masculine FI. I think it's hard to say.
Have you heard me mention examples in my other interviews about like the NF code, like for other people?
Yeah, no, I have, and I remember like I've forgotten the specifics, but yeah, it's like I never think of it as a code for me. Like it exists, but like I never
Yeah.
have it as like a thing I like look at. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna follow this code. Like
Huh.
it's different. I remember originally thinking I could have had feminine FI briefly because of that it feels more fluid, but it definitely is masculine. Yeah.
I feel like the ESFPs tend to have the quote more than like the INTJs, because like I think for you guys with the NIFI in a savior state, like first
Yeah,
it's so unconscious that it's like automatic that it's
it
hard to put
is.
into words. But like my girlfriend, for example, like when I did prod her for it, her code is discomfort over resentment, right? So I'm like, oh, that's a really good one, right? Like that's so then she based her actions on um, like not having to resent someone else by putting herself in uh uncomfortable.
That I could relate to that. Yeah. Like I really want to put myself in situations where I can be myself. Cause like when I was growing up, like my entire immediate family, they're all FE. And I didn't know until I learned like type theory that like this is actually the reason I don't relate to them on an
Yeah,
emotional level so deeply. Like they don't understand like why is he so intense and brooding and like willing to not play with the like FE game that they all play. And so
right.
I do think there's a core of my NF mission that like wants to always be in an environment that I can just be myself. And so I seek to align and seek out other people who have that FI shared with me so that I can just be myself. Cause like the masculine SE, like I really still have the desire for this. I don't want to live in the conceptual every day. Like I don't want to have to like be churning this kind of stressful feminine NI all the time. Like I want to be just kind of in the moment, even though it's the SE last, like it is still kind of a driving force for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that's definitely true for me.
Yeah, I think deep down inside we all seek the fourth function. Like there is something
Yeah.
there for sure. And I think like as a fellow FI user like you, I think deep down inside we do want to have that full self-expression at some point, like being able to like set that free, instead of like being so constrained from
Yeah.
within. Like I know like I don't know if you've ever watched Owen Cook videos, which is like, David Chan kind of sees him as like the alpha ENFP guy, and the
Yeah.
message is always kind of like FE like where he's like pure self-expression is like the end goal. And I'm like, that is true. Like I do seek that as an FI person. Like I want to be seen from
Mm.
I don't really give a shit about the T, to be honest. Even though I'm doing it all,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
kind of ironic. But I think you might be a little different because you have NT blast last, right? So we'll get to that later on, So
Yeah.
I mean, um, I want to ask you about your NIFI reoccurring emotional patterns next,
Okay. Okay.
So that's a little bit different from what I have. I have SIFI, right? So it's like
Yeah.
I have a word for emotions that I'm struggling with or default emotions that I kind of go to. But for you
Mm.
guys, you have like a reoccurring emotional pattern that always happens.
Yeah.
Whether that be on purpose or not on purpose, it's there, And then obviously you can use it as a tool to either create a new pattern for yourself or the good ones obviously you want to keep, right? So I want to hear
Yeah.
your perspective, like what's going on there with you.
Yeah. Like I've noticed my sleep, like I know someone who's FISI. And so I noticed with her, like she is very dependent on her immediate environment, on how it updates her emotional state. And with me, like it's very much more independent of reality. So like I can have stressors and things in the sensory world changing all the time. And like my internal emotional state is just like this, but it does change drastically. If I have like a new NI, like, oh, I just realized something different, my emotional state will just radically change. Like it's very based on conceptual voodoo in my mind, where yeah, like for the SIs, it seems a lot more like, oh God, this like sensory thing is triggering me. Now I'm really mad. Like I'm like, why are you so mad? It's not a big deal. It's like SE for me. Like it's who cares, you know? But
Right.
yeah.
Oh, dude, I'm so jealous of that. Like earlier, I went for a walk. I'm in Poland right now in Krakow, and I was like so overwhelmed because I'm in a new city and there's like so many people and stuff. Even though I'm like an extrovert, I get overwhelmed by people and especially new sensory stuff. Because at first I was thinking, I'm like, am I overwhelmed by humans? I'm like, I don't think so. I feel like I'm overwhelmed by the sensory because I don't have
Yeah.
SE like you, right? Like the SE people actually get charged by new environments. But for
I
me,
do, yeah.
right? Like I need like I like it's kind of weird. It's like almost like very IJ like. Well, it is. It's even though I'm an EP, it's like this is unfamiliar sensory. My SI cannot compute. And
Yeah.
and I was like getting overwhelmed. It's kind of like with the example that you said about like, like your friend, right? And in the moment,
Yeah.
like I moved to like a park where it's like all green. There's nothing like nothing like new sensory wise in terms of buildings and stuff. It's just like all green and trees. Suddenly I saw my state like chill out. And then so I think what you just said earlier is completely like true, about like what you saw with your friend. And I'm jealous about you guys with that NF sleep where like you're not dependent with the sensory to move your emotion. It's so
Yeah.
annoying, man. So annoying. But the bad thing about you guys is it's harder to pinpoint the exact emotion you're feeling because it's
Oh, it is.
sensory.
Yeah.
So it's like a double-edged sword for both of us, with the NF versus SF sleep, right?
Yeah, it's so funny because like she's INFP, so like her core state is like trying to drill down and like what is he feeling right now? I want to figure it out, and she
Yeah.
can never quite get it. It's like really funny, but oh, sorry, one second. But yeah, like I noticed that I almost prefer to even create environments for myself that are like intentionally stressful sometimes. Like I almost take the challenge of what my SE can bear to endure. And so I'll like throw myself in something that would intentionally trigger the SIs a lot more. And I'm like, let me see if I can still stay stable. It's like almost like an IJ, like challenge mindset. Like I want to like see if I can still be, normal and like what is a really different environment. Cause I literally just moved cross country like 2 weeks ago and like it's
Oh,
completely different. Like I brought everything I owned in my car. Now I'm here in Colorado. It's like
where were you?
I wanted to see. I was in Orlando, Florida for about a year. I was living with another friend of mine just to mix up my life because I had lived in Kansas City actually my whole life until a year ago. And so, yeah, I really wanted to challenge myself with like throwing myself in different environments because I know the SE is very good at that, right? Like it's very good at adapting and stuff. Even if it's SE last, like it is still activated very well in me. So I wanted to see kind of in that experimental mind I have, like what happens when I throw myself and really push that SE ability to adapt and stuff. And I've noticed that I really do like I'm calm, like I'm fine. Like I
Yeah.
get people who are SI are asking like, oh my God, like I have an ENTP friend who is masculine SI last, and he's like, oh my God, I'd be so freaking out. Like how, I drove 18 hours straight from Orlando to Kansas City, and he's like, oh my God, I would have like stopped like 8 times, and I would have like needed so many breaks and decompression moments. I'm like, no, I just like drove 18 hours straight, like it was fine, but I don't know, it's kind of funny.
That's so fun. That's so interesting with it.
Yeah,
That even though like for both of us we have sensory at the bottom, like the fact that you have SE, you kind of have
yeah,
like miniature ESFP in you, like that superpower to just like navigate like the change in physical world with some sort of finesse, Um,
yeah.
like for me, for example, with my SI, I have like a miniature ISTJ, so I can't organize
Mhm.
myself to like an extent. Not as good as them, obviously. Like I've seen the difference, and I'm pretty sure for you, you've seen the difference between you and ESFPs and how like you're not quite to their level, but like you can
No, no.
do some of it. You know what I mean?
It's growing though. Like I know because I'm 32. I just turned 32. And so like I've noticed, especially as I kind of hit that 30 mark and a little bit beyond, like that SE is really starting to kick in now. And I'm like trying to play into it. I'm trying to amplify the growth even more. So it's like I've had moments in my life where I didn't even realize the SE potential I had. So say, for example, I was very introverted in my room all the time in my 20s, grinding on my NI obsessions. And then I moved to Orlando and like I met with my or I stayed with my he's an ISTJ. He's a cranked up blast play ISTJ, and like he helped me go out and do some stuff in the world. And like I went to like a club, like a nightclub, and like it was just blasting audio, like super loud dance floor environment. And I went out and like danced for the first time in like my actual life. And I'd like took in the sensory, like I played into the SC so hard that
Yeah.
I noticed the flip. Like I actually felt the flip to like, okay, this is really what an ESFP feels like. And I was like, I couldn't stop dancing. Like I was like just out there. I had no sensation of body, no sensation of anything. I couldn't tell my heartbeat. I couldn't even feel my heart. Like, and I was just like really going hard at it. And once that happened, it like permanently elevated the SE. Like even though that was a momentary singular event,
Yeah.
everything since then, the SE has been elevated ever since. And like I try to do that on purpose now where I force the SE to be very strong on purpose and then try to get it to be stronger just passively after that. So it's like I'm trying to build that ESFP energy within me a little bit more every day.
I think it's good that you did that because now you have more reference experience of like
Yes.
what you're capable of. So I think from like a growth standpoint, that is so deadly. Like the more, especially SEFI, you're also audio too, audio kinesthetic. So the dance floor really like
Oh yeah, it was huge.
good. Like music and like body movement, that's like killer. Like
Mhm.
I know a lot of INTJ guys who are like really into dancing or break dancing. Like even Tim Ferriss, he's a break
Mhm.
dancer, right? Like, it's like, definitely like that audio kinesthetic plays a big part for you guys, 100%. Um, I do want to ask you about the double masculine SF consume next. Double masculine,
Okay,
double
yeah.
activated. So you're gonna be extra ESFP like just because it's double masculine, double activated. So um it's almost like you're almost like a miniature ESFP almost in that aspect, right? Like you could tap
Yeah.
into it and you would have a lot of confidence because it's double masculine. Essentially the double masculine
Mhm.
animal is where a lot of the confidence comes from, right? Or certainty, if anything. So
Yeah.
I want to ask you about different stuff. So I'm gonna start with the surface layer stuff, and then we go deeper. Okay. So the first surface layer stuff I want to ask you is like consuming like dumb shit like that. That is like definitely like SF. Like a lot of people are shocked. They're like, because INTJs are like very like cerebral and very like intellect.
Yes.
A lot of people are shocked that INTJs love consuming dumb shit. Like it's like what? This is what you're doing in
Yeah.
your spare time. They're like, So can you talk about a little bit about that?
Well, I think because I'm audio, that manifests the most in like music. And
Yeah,
so I will uh love to seek out and consume like very basic surface music that like most people consider lowbrow or
yeah,
like, but it like makes me feel like the most masculine to like blast some like heavy SE like R&B music or something
yeah.
crazy, like, just like roll my windows down in my car, have my hand out the window, blast the music. And it's just like it's so surface level. But I would say that's the where it manifests the most is in music. Because like I on my Spotify, like I literally have 5,000 songs, and I spend like 10 hours a week trying to just grind finding new music and stuff. And that is an never-ending journey for me to continue, because like my novelty, I get used to things so quickly. Like my it's a very interesting dynamic where I seek chaos so much because I get used to what I find so quickly. So I do want to like always find, and it's easiest to find the surface level stuff too. So like I'm just constantly trying to grab all this like surface stuff and trying to sift what I can like not find boring after the first time I listen to it, because it's very interesting. But I wouldn't say there's any like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other things. Like I know there's a go-to YouTube thing I watch every day before I sleep, for example, where it's just like a game that it's Age of Empires 2. It's a game that I grew up playing, but like I can't help but just watch like casts of that game forever. Like it's so there's no conceptual like interest. I just love seeing new games, and like I like sports. Like I love watching sports. I love football and basketball and baseball, and I love just like the I don't know. It's hard to pin. Like there's it's with me. It's so interesting because it's like it's like simultaneously surface level, but there's still the NITE like conceptual underneath it. So like I'm trying. It's hard to describe. I can't describe anything in my brain, man. It's so hard. Um,
Well, I know Dave loves MMA and like
yeah,
WWE, right? So it's like there's definitely something to that double masculine SF consume.
yeah,
That's because I noticed like the non-kinesthetic INTJs stay away from that stuff, right? But like the kinesthetic
yeah.
seems to like gravitate towards it.
Interesting. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I can't think of any other super surface level stuff. Like,
Okay,
yeah.
I want to bring up something interesting for
Okay.
surface layer stuff. So TikTok. So I know that's like a Achilles heel for a lot of INTJs.
Oh, I thought of something. I thought of something. So I am obsessed with just like cute animal videos. Like I just love finding like shorts and short videos of cute animals. And actually, my INFP friend loves that I keep feeding her these
Yeah.
like just completely, there's nothing to it. It's just a cute animal, but like I just can't help but find like as many as I can of like just every animal ever. Like, oh, it's a cute little baby skunk, or it's a cute little baby deer. Like any animal in existence. Like it's really silly. I don't know why I like it so much, but I do. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, because I was listening to Dave talk and he like gives himself permission to consume TikTok videos, and I thought it was
Hmm.
interesting, being consumed last. But like, I was also listening to online like to people like Tim Ferriss, who's like apparently he said that he gets sucked in TikTok so hard, so he has to like make sure that he has nothing important that day to do, otherwise the TikTok is it
Oh yeah.
suck him in. So I was like, oh my god, the INTJs love the shorts, like a lot of SE
I like, yeah,
happening.
I embrace that. Where like because I'm blast last, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wake up, get the sleep out of the way, and now I'm just gonna like I know I can't help but consume. So I just like when I have my morning coffee, I'll just start grinding, like looking for stupid consume. Like I'll just find like a bunch of memes and a bunch of little animal videos and just anything I can find. And then like I have to do that for like 2 or 3 hours. And then like, okay, now I can like maybe do work after that. But it's like I kind of embrace it because it's hard for me to avoid. Like it always distracts me if I don't get it out of the way first, like in a savior state.
I think that's good that you
Yeah.
have that awareness and like the self acceptance that it's like you need to do
Yeah.
some consume first that might not be productive. If you're like a lead NT blast person,
Yeah.
you might look at that and be like, that's such a waste. Although I wouldn't say it is actually, but like, but it's interesting, like for you, that's like the default, like, oh, it's just part of the routine. I have to do that,
Yeah. Well,
and
I
there's
fought so hard to like try to make it like the NIT is like, oh, this is not efficient. Like you need to be doing work right now. And I'm like,
right.
I tried so hard to like avoid the supposedly inefficient things like that. But I just learned like actually it is more efficient for me to just get it out of the way because I noticed over time like the pattern, I actually get more done when I like honor my animal order properly or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, because you're not going through that like mental resistance anymore, right? Just like
Yeah.
just get it out of the way and then now you can move on,
Oh, I just thought of your question a long time ago. Like, what is your like the NF mission? So much of my mission, I realize, is trying to flow downstream, like not have headwinds. And in my within my own personality and within
Yeah.
my own environment, I try to do as much as I can to fit my masculine addictions into the routine so that I don't have to fight myself. Like I really don't want to have to ever fight myself in any capacity, like both in the FI authenticity, but also in the SE impulses that I have. Like that is one of my core things is to within myself generate a lifestyle that keeps me just in a flow state all the time. And then eventually building that out so that I can get more of my tribe that I care about also in that state too. I want to get them in a state where they can flow downstream with their own masculine functions too. Like I have a very high interest in like the masculine functions in particular. I almost think they're more important than like the saviors themselves. So like if you can, it doesn't really matter where it is in your stack or where the animals are. Like if you can find a way to get those masculines working in your favor, like it's so powerful because those are the things you can never avoid. The impulses to like like they're always going to be gnawing at you to like satisfy them because they're so pushy. Yeah.
Yeah, you cannot not see it. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I have SF sleep last, but it's double masculine.
Yeah.
So even though it's fourth, I always see it. It's ridiculous. It's annoying it's fourth though, because it's like super deep
Mhm.
state, but
Yeah.
cannot avoid it. And I've asked the same people, like other people too, with like a double masculine fourth animal.
Mhm.
They can all see their fourth animal when it's double masculine. So
Yeah.
there's definitely something to what you were just saying right now.
Mhm.
I want to ask the next dimension to that SF consume, and the next dimension to that is external self-awareness. So kind of
Oh
like
yeah.
seeing yourself from a third person perspective and seeing how you come across to the tribe. And this is especially a good question for you because you are double masculine, double activated SF consume. So if you notice like the ESFPs, they dress really well, like they look good,
Yes.
and you have flex as a savior based on your
Mhm.
social typing.
Yes.
How do you present yourself externally to the outside world? Like, do you care about fashion and all that stuff as a result?
Um, when I was younger, I used to be very, very worried about, oh, this like would look silly. Like but it's interesting because like I have the savior masculine FI component still, where like I have the urge to just be like, screw it. Like I don't really care the tribe too much, but like I'm always aware. So like what happens with me most often is that I will intentionally like wear the simple INTJ, like just plain shirt, plain whatever, knowing the fashion isn't very like attractive, but like I'm never not aware of it. Like but again, trying to play into the masculines that I have, like I almost want to embrace the fact that I'm so simplistic in my wardrobe and almost like not care so hard that it becomes acceptable. Like, oh, this person is wearing like very unassuming, his hair's a little raggedy. He didn't like try super hard to look good and he seems totally fine. Like he almost seems unusually comfortable with that. And so I'm trying to like flip it on his head where rather than put on the wardrobe that other people see as really, fitting the environment, I almost want to like uh, make what I naturally want to have acceptable through the means of the confidence I portray while having it. So it's interesting. Like the awareness of the fashion is very high and the awareness of the appearance is very high, but like I don't try to fit the tribe as much as I try to bring the tribe to me. Like I try to make what I already naturally do acceptable through how I like emotionally present myself. I guess that's what I would do. So
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense to me. Do you ever go out of your way once in a while on special occasions to like just rock like really nice clothes though, like in fashion, or do you try to go with your default like plain INTJ look and just like focus on the confidence aspect of it? Uh, you know,
So there is a I like so for example, the reason why people who get to know me like me a lot is because I am so mopey, I am so quiet, and then I have this like contrast where I can flip to being super goofy and they're like, "Where did that come from?" So what I like to do as it pertains to maybe fashion or how I look is I maybe once in a blue moon I will try to look way different and just make it look super in contrast to what they're used to seeing. I love playing with that contrast element. So I don't want to look good all the time. That's too boring to me. I want to look good once every, couple months. And then they're like, what? I didn't know you look, you could do that. And like, I love that energy. Like I love like surprising people because like the IJ observer, like I'm always looking out for surprises as it is. So like I like to project that like, oh, I want to surprise other people in this in my EP swing, I guess. So that's
right.
the way I do it probably. Yeah.
It almost feels very FE like if you're trying to get an emotional reaction, from
Yeah.
right. So that's interesting that you're doing that for sure. Another thing with the double masculine SF consume external self-awareness is the double masculine aspect of it. So like would you say you try to be as fit as possible and also have an image of, just being in shape or
Yeah, so I want to look not unhealthy. Like I
yeah,
don't want to necessarily work out and be ripped and look, oh wow, he looks so healthy. I just want to not. It's more about minimizing the negative, I would say, because
right.
I've kind of I used to work out a lot. I used to try to look nice and fit and healthy and stuff, but I kind of grew into again because it's so hard for me to like maintain the routines of like manually like oh working out and lifting weights and pushing iron and stuff like it's not necessarily what I naturally love doing. So I do want again to play into my masculines. I want to do activities and things that naturally make me look fit rather than trying to like artificially make my body look more fit, I guess. So I would say like yeah, it's hard to describe, but yeah, that's about it.
I think the SI people are better at that because
Yeah,
it's like a routine, like an exercise routine. We always want it to be the same. Like it's
yeah.
versus like the SE gets bored very easily
I
with
get so bored. It's so
yeah,
bad.
yeah. Like I've noticed it with my girlfriend. It's like, why did you change your program? You should stick to your program at least 3 months. That's like the general rule of thumb, before you switch.
Yeah.
Like you are supposed to switch, but you're supposed to wait at least 3 months minimum. So
What
there's and that's like a scientific thing, right? Like you're
yeah.
supposed to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, really. A lot of SI people never change, which is a problem. But the SE people change too fast. So there's like the
Mhm.
happy medium is 3 months, right? So But I do think it's like interesting to see like the contrast between the SI and the SE and how they approach exercise and how they're both wrong in some regard,
Yeah.
with the approach.
Like
Um,
what I want to do is I want to install like monkey bars on every ceiling and everywhere in my house so that I can just like hang and climb everywhere because like I
yeah,
actually enjoy like just spontaneous, just like I love like jungle gyms and like playgrounds for children. Like I that's my favorite kind of exercise. And so like I want to find a way to like make my environment just naturally make me want to do all kinds of stuff so that it's like fun for me because I can't stand the routine. Like my ISTG friend, when I lived with him in Orlando, like every single day he was on his workout equipment doing the nah, 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 and
yeah.
he's like trying to look, he tries to elevate because he has a very high status mindset. Like he's trying to make himself look like higher status by
Is he
how
like is he like a
strong he
number
looks.
one?
Yeah.
Is he
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
social
he
type
is a
one?
one. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely interesting to see like how the ones would work, the way they work out would be different from like the other social types. Like for
Yeah.
them, it's like purely for status. Like
Mhm.
the appearance that would get them the most status boost, you know? Um,
Yeah.
that's cool. But so it sounds like to me that you are trying to turn your environment into like SE chaos, so that
Yes.
at any given time when you have that urge, you can just let it
Yeah.
out. And you're trying to make it efficient too by having it in your house. You don't have to leave, right? So
Exactly.
being lead sleep yourself. So it's like chaos, but within your box, essentially, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
okay, cool. I want to ask you next about your third animal, which is ST play. So
Hmm.
STE. That's like doing physical work or more concrete collaborations with the tribe. How do you personally see that, having it in a hobby position
Um,
or minor
yeah, I
duty?
notice. Yeah, I really enjoy like improvisation with the environment. So like, oh, we don't have this piece of furniture that we need to like do something. So like I'll like find a pull-up bar and like this can work as a mic stand. And I'll like MacGyver something out of nothing to help both myself and the tribe with something that they're missing. Like I almost enjoy more rather than going on Amazon and buying the thing you need. Like I want to like find some duct tape and find some random things around the house and like concoct some contraption that can like fit the role of what we were going to buy. And like it annoys people sometimes. They're like, how can you like why are you using a computer desktop tower cardboard box as a nightstand? Like that looks so bad. But I'm like, I love like improvising all these little sensory things to like achieve some kind of practical goal I want. But I noticed I do that with my friends a lot too. Like I'll try to, especially in person, I'll try to like use what they have in their immediate environment to help them when like I spot something inefficient in their life. Like, oh, this is annoying me. Like, oh, the sunlight's coming. Like my ISTJ friend, he has sleep third, and so like he has a hard time like really addressing his sleep sometimes. And he was getting annoyed that the light was coming through his window, like it was waking him up because he works like a night shift. I'm like, let me go find some cardboard, and I cut out a giant piece of cardboard and I put it behind the blinds on his window so
Yeah.
that way the light wouldn't come through. He's like, oh wow, thank you, man. I'm like, why didn't you just fix that yourself? He's like, oh, I don't know, like he was demon sleep. He didn't really like want to address like making sure you're sleeping properly. But like, oh no, I'm sleep first. I want to make sure you're sleeping enough, and I'll ST improvise to make sure you
Yeah.
can sleep enough. Like yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. And any chance you can like take out that hobby animal, right?
Yeah.
To do something fun with the tribe, for you in
Mm,
your case, you gave him a concrete solution for
yeah,
his future.
exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you also use your ST play to gather what works like concretely from the tribe, like as a tool to just, also support that consume, because like, um, ultimately there's two ways you can gather data, right? From people
Yeah.
or by yourself. So ST
Mm.
play is from people. How do you go about doing that?
It definitely plays the play works with consume because like I have the consume play in the middle, so I'm kind of oddly skibby in many ways,
Yeah.
like because I'm cycling through those. So what I'll do is I notice my consume and play working together to try to I can't help but try to point out like potential evidence or potential things that could be uh invalidating some kind of worldview they have or some kind of idea. Like, I'm really good at like doing my consume, figuring out the ideas, and then I always go to the tribe. I'm like, okay, you may not know this actually. Like, I hear some evidence that your idea might be wrong, and I do this to all my friends. Like, it almost annoys them at times, where like I can't help but point out all these little things that they might that isn't actually they're not aware of, I guess. So I would say it's I don't necessarily notice the play acting on its own. It's very often conjoined with that consume, like the consume because it's so activated, it's so masculine. Like like the play is always with that consume element. It's very rare. I would say the only time it is by itself is when I'm improvising, like the things I was talking about with my friend. But yeah, I would say the play is almost always with that consume for sure. Yeah, it's hard to think of other examples.
Would you say you're very touchy-feely with people because that masculine SE and whatnot?
Yeah, like I know like the love languages thing people like to do. I know like physical touch is one of my highest things for sure. Like when I was younger, like I couldn't help but just touch everything. Like I'd walk through a grocery store and I'd have my arms out like this, just like touching the entire, like messing up all the like facings of all the products on the shelves, and like it would always annoy
Oh,
like my parents. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, I just want to touch things. And I used to be very anal about like long sleeves, and there were wrinkles and my socks were like clumped up at the end. I always had to like make sure everything felt right. And like I'm very particular. Like I don't want to wear a hat, I don't want to wear sunglasses, I don't want to wear a watch. Like I want to just be like very particular with my sensory physical aspect. I don't know.
it's so funny when the inner joker comes out for like the IJs, like for you flipping stuff in
Yeah.
the store. It's
Yeah.
like it's I always see like the IJs actually being like the best prankster, or like the EPs are like the most controlling type, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. Um, okay, so I want to ask you next about your blast. You have double feminine anti-blast last, but
So annoying, man.
it's your first two functions. So
Yeah.
it has the highest container for growth, essentially, like
Hmm.
highest potential for growth. But you know how your function grow is through repetition, and it's gonna get the least amount of repetition as a result of being your fourth animal, despite having the biggest container. So it's like
Yeah.
your SF consumed is not the biggest container. Like it's actually limited compared
It's
to your anti
yeah.
blast. But then you're putting the reps on that tiny container versus like the huge container, right? So
Yeah.
can you talk about the frustration with that, and also um your kind of more blatant practice with practicing that thing, because you know that's the thing that actually is your strongest asset.
Yeah, it's so because like I can viscerally sense how strong of an ability I have to produce into the world and create all kinds of insane blasts. And it's just like I sense the power of my NI and the power of my T. It's so strong, but like they can't talk. Like they can't talk together. Like I
Yeah.
have to try so hard to like I think that the double feminine blast, it's like obsessed with that masculine consume savior. Like I'm trying to get the perfect blast. So like I have the perfect consume, and then I use that to make the best blast ever. And so it causes so much iteration of like planning and trying to develop. Like I try to work on some blast for 5 minutes, and I'm like, no, I can envision something way better. And I go back to the drawing board, and I'm like, okay, let me figure out the even more perfect blast. It's because like I think there's two elements to it. There's the double feminine of it. It makes me very good at dealing with problems that other people have. So if other people have an NT problem and I have the energy to go into that blast last, I am good at like, okay, let me try to like pay attention to the tribe and see where you need, like I'm very good at like giving them just barely beyond what they're capable of doing so that they can figure out how to grow and understand a bit more. But with my own interests, like it's so hard to like ever get anything out. And I have to just I don't know, it's so like it's like my number one stress, like worry every day. Like I'm always trying to figure out a way to like should I try to just put something out in the world and disregard the perfectionistic impulse I have and then iterate from that? Or should I play into my urge to make the perfect possible blast? It's like a very big struggle. I don't even know the answer, like what's the right answer, but yeah, it's like that innate urge to create something so groundbreaking. It's like very strong.
I think the problem is, like, I've seen the play last version of you.
Hmm.
They have blast third, so they are obviously using it, right? Um,
Yeah.
and I think the biggest problem with what the blast last are doing is the only way to get good at blast is to blast, and it's like you
Yep.
could there's like a famous quote by Bruce Lee where it's like, I don't fear the man that knows 1,000 kicks or something. I fear the man that knows one kicks and practice it like 10,000, like 1,000 times. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's kind of like how I see the blast blasters. It's like they're imagining this perfect world with this perfect blast. And like when the blast come out, it's like fart gas because it's like you haven't
Yep.
practiced shit. So you don't know, you actually don't
Yep.
have the competence to do it, to do it properly. Unlike those crazy, your type cousins, like
Yeah.
the blast sleep, like the consume last versions of you, right?
Yeah. Like Dave. Yeah.
Like, yeah, Dave or that chick that they were doing a class with a while back, like something Sanchez, Cody Sanchez, or whatever. Like,
Hmm.
like the blast is just so good with it almost feels like they didn't even um think about what they were gonna say first. They just came out, It just came
Yeah.
out and it's like suddenly they're like a super expert that they pulled something out of their butt and it's like amazing. But the truth is, compared to you guys, that with the high consume, their blast is actually not as strong in terms of like
Yeah.
actual substance that it's actually going to produce at the end because it doesn't have the substance that you've gathered over the years,
Hmm.
So there's like the irony of that, right? So one person can blast with so much finesse and confidence, but behind the scenes it's empty. For you, when it comes out, there is a lot of substance, but it's not coming out correctly because you don't have the practice,
Yeah.
So how do you wrestle with that, like knowing that? Because you probably know this already. You're not an idiot.
Yeah.
So how do you wrestle with that?
Yeah. Like I've had to through many iterations of trying to blast, like I've learned the mediums in which I'm a little better at actually getting closer to producing what is actually in my mind. So for example, I have a kind of addiction to like MS Paint charts and visual aids and stuff. So like whenever I'm trying to blast some concept or realization I have, rather than trying to like write a Substack article or tweet about it or
Yeah.
make an article of some sort, like I actually use visual like aids, and I notice it makes it a lot easier for me to get the initial blast of like, okay, I have like this web of a concept in this visual form, and now I can use that to iterate from. And I think that's like the key of how I would create some blast that meets my double consume standards, is like something like that where it is like requires very few words, because like the nature of my mind is so inarticulate. Like I don't even know so much of what makes me unique. Like so much of the power of my brain is just vague. And like I want to, when I blast things, I want to also honor what I feel is hard for me to do, and like make it so that other people don't have to read and don't have to like crunch that logical thought process in their brain. Like they can just see it and it just like hits them. Like I want the anything I blast to just be so obvious, so simple, so elegant that it just like hits them. Like they don't have to process super hard. And that's like the style of blast I want to do.
So you need a lot of supporting documents like visuals and stuff
Yeah.
to blast with. I think the problem with the blast last is um and also based on what you said is it's not concise enough. So you could be talking for like a while and people are like, oh my God, dude, can you get to the fucking point? Like,
Yeah.
and you do have a point, but it's gonna take a while to get there because you have to do the consumer story first, right? And then
Yeah.
people are like, oh, geez, like so you might lose the audience even though you do have substance for your blast.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very aware of like the tribe when I turn on the TV. Like I know like how long their attention span is going to be, and I know in myself how long my own attention span would be if I was in their shoes. And it's like,
Right.
okay, I need to make something that I know will capture their retention rate. Like their retention rate will be even the entire time I'm talking or whatever. Because like I've made like a few YouTube videos just as a kind of test, in certain areas. Like I can see the analytics of like, okay, I can tell like they stop caring really hard, they stop watching at this point. I'm like, okay, like I want to make it to anything I make is like it almost like just stays even the whole time. Yeah, I don't know.
I want to
But
ask
yeah,
you next.
it's no,
Sorry,
no,
yeah.
go ahead. I didn't have anything else. It was just
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about the NT flavor of your blast specifically. So the NT side
Mhm.
of things. So you're NT last, right? Um,
Yeah.
so this is gonna be like a multi-layered question. The first layer is what is your relationship like with figuring things out? Or do you find that difficult because your NT is double feminine? Like, being confident with the solution, because that's what NT is, right? Is coming up with
Mhm.
solutions. How do you feel about the solution that you have organized and you're ready to present to the tribe, or even just
It
for yourself?
Yeah, it like there's never an end. So like no there's no worldview or concept I've ever constructed that I ever feel satisfied with. And so that is part of also why it feels hard to blast because like I know the moment I put it out, I'm gonna change my mind like the next day of like what I believe to be like the nuance of what I'm putting out. Like I always can tell like it's not quite what I mean. And so on a micro scale, so I'll like say something in Discord and I'll write a couple lines of like what I think I'm trying to get across, and then I'll edit it like 5 times over the course of like rereading it 6 or 7 more times or whatever. And I'm like, I notice that manifesting in everything I do where like it I know it's not exactly the right concept yet. And I don't think there ever will be a point at which I feel like I truly have it. Like it's a never ending journey. And so it's like, sorry, could you repeat your question? I'm kind of going on tangent. I'm trying to wrap back around to what you were asking.
Yeah, no, I was asking about like the NT side, the solution
Yeah.
side, and your confidence level with presenting to the
Oh, the
tribe,
confidence. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
also for your own benefit too when you're trying to figure out something for yourself.
Okay. So I have an interesting thing I realized. So, like, I notice the moment I do put out something, I am almost 100% confident. Like, even though logically I know, like, and through the past experience of seeing me do any kind of blast, like, I know that I won't be satisfied with it like the next day. But in the moment that I ever put out anything, it's always like, oh, this is for sure it. Like I have that like oh dom, like I know it's this for sure. And then so I have supreme confidence in the moment and then supreme unconfidence like the next time I start thinking a bit more, like the next day or a few hours later. And so yeah, that is one of my biggest struggles is like because people see it as like disingenuous. Like, what the heck? You thought that this was for sure. And like now you're telling me it's like the opposite or it's like way different. I'm like, well, I have no way of like articulating the nuances of how my brain works. And so it's hard for them to like believe me sometimes. Like it's almost like the boy who cried wolf, where I so many times I will posit something as like this is for sure. And then the next day I'm like, well, I didn't quite mean it. And so it takes someone who knows that my first draft is never quite what I mean to like understand that in me that so that they don't judge me as hard. But I noticed that that confidence change between when I first put it out and later is like very big. And so a lot of times I do this in myself too, where like I have to so like before I can ever sleep, I have to convince myself that I know everything for sure. That way I can sleep sound. And then I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know anything. Like I was completely wrong. It's like, and I had to go through the whole journey again that next day of like, okay, let me consume some more. Let me play some more. Let me ask some people, okay, what do you think about this? And then I'll blast it again. And then I'm like, okay, I know it for sure this time. And then I go to sleep and wake up and it's completely different again. So yeah.
It sounds like you're gonna piss off a lot of TI people based on
Oh
you.
yeah, they don't like me. Like
Yeah.
masculine TI for
Yeah,
sure.
the
Like I
masculine
have a lot
TI.
of
Yeah, dude, you're gonna piss off so many masculine. Like I have TE, it's feminine, I don't care.
yeah,
Especially like I feel like a lot of TE people, if they get to know you, they're like, oh yeah, it's just Ryan. He's not
yeah,
he's kind of like what's the word I'm looking for here? You're throwing shit at the wall, hoping something
yeah,
sticks, and it hasn't stuck yet. But then the TI people will think, oh, this is definitive. And then
yeah,
and then you're like, no, bro, it's still work in progress. And they're like,
yeah,
and then they feel like they got slimed. It's like almost like led on. It's like the
yeah.
TI is so important, right? Like the logic, but for you, it's like, like
Yeah. Well, it reminds me a lot of like how the OP theory was developed with like obviously I know Shan is masculine to you, but like broadly speaking, the way it was developed is just like they did so many iterations of just like throwing shit at the wall, and
Yeah.
eventually something that kind of resembled TI did emerge. And so you get a lot of TI types that have come in later, like, oh, I kind of see some kind of TI here, but like initially it was just completely, we have no idea. We're just gonna throw shit at the wall. And like I know all my masculine TI friends, like they project that everyone else, when they say something definitively true about what they're logically thinking, like, oh, they must be building these like logical steps of like, oh, this is like logically sound and this leads to this and this and this and this. And like, no, I get that by finding all the wrong answers first. So like I throw shit, if this is wrong, 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 this is wrong. And eventually there's a void left of like, you do this is wrong 10,000 times. And then the void that is left is kind of TI at the very end. But like you have to get through all 10,000 of those wrong answers to get what is true at the end. Like that's the way I work.
So since we're talking about TI and TE and stuff, like I actually
Yeah.
came to an epiphany just today. I went for a walk, right? And then, like I had like a little bit of a tidal wave because I was in a new city and like I'm not used to SE, being a lead SI person. And like one of the epiphanies I have is about like survival and death. And
Mhm.
like everyone has something about themselves where they are not allowed. Okay. So even if you're like self above tribe, but you're consume last, for example, like the consume last people I have interviewed said, I am not allowed to consume, for
Mhm.
example. Like for you, maybe it's blast. Like I'm not allowed, like why who am I to tell the tribe what to do, or like what,
Yeah.
like unless you get permission first, then you're allowed. Like it's your turn to do a presentation, for example. Like obviously you have the tribe permission. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But like without that, it's like there is like a inner resistance you have to fight first, where unless you are giving the tribe permission that you are allowed, right? Usually it's like
Yeah.
the fourth animal is usually where that manifests, right? So the thought process I had, I was thinking about is human survival. And um you know so over the years, like we had to rely on what we are allowed to do socially to allow us to survive. Like if you look at the caveman days and whatnot. And the way I
Mhm.
see it is like with the FI and TI. And what I was thinking about earlier, very interestingly enough, is a lot of FI people have that inner desire to have full self-expression, as we have discussed
Yeah.
here. But because it's introverted, it's so difficult to get there,
Mhm.
right? And then the TI people, they can't be wrong, because
Yeah.
for us FI, I almost feel like self-expression equals death, or like for the TI people, mistake equals death, at least in the
Yeah.
caveman days.
I've noticed that so hard. Yeah.
And it's like it's so animalistic that even if we logically understand this, we still have trouble doing it, because
Mhm.
it's not just like a trauma that we experience perhaps in our childhood or adolescence, right? This is hardwired in our DNA. It's that's something that is going to be so hard to overwrite unless you're drinking alcohol or something, right? You
Yeah.
know? So it's just something that I thought was kind of interesting. So earlier when you're talking about like the throwing shit at the wall thing, for us,
Yeah.
mistake is not death. Mistake is
Yeah.
good. Mistake is how you get to a solution that works in reality.
Yeah.
But for the TI, mistake equals death. So
Yeah.
it's interesting from that perspective. Um, but I think ultimately the end goal is for TI and TE to work together, because I feel like TE is so inefficient that you would waste so much resources to get it
Yeah.
right with TE. That I think like the first few iteration has to be from a TI, because they would think a lot of things through with feedback from
Mhm.
a TE person, obviously, you know. And then basically you would have several prototypes uh, with the TE to do quality control to make sure that the TI is like going to be effective, right? And then same goes for
Yeah.
the FI, where like the FE people working with the FI people can slowly help the FI person express. It's annoying when the like the FE person trying to get a emotional reaction out of you, and it's like,
Yeah.
dude, like fuck off, right? It's like,
Yeah.
but like if
Yeah.
you really think about it, like maybe they're trying to help you. It's like it's not like a bad thing,
Yeah.
like because like deep down inside we do want to have self-expression. It's just like the problem with FI is like I don't want to do it right now. Like
Mhm.
why do we have to wait until like like a certain
Yeah.
time. And then it's kind of like blast, as we discussed earlier. You don't have practice with the blast, therefore your blast comes across as awkward or weird. Well, with the self-expression, the time when you do decide to FE that FI, it's now weird because it's like charged it up, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like my thought process with this whole thing. You know, obviously, it's nice to have OPS because like we can verbalize all these pieces.
Yeah. No, it makes total sense. Like how there's a lot of wasted energy in like the extroverted functions when they don't have an introverted kind of guide. And then there's a lot of like wasted energy in the introverted functions when they don't have the perspectives to know like if their one track is the complete wrong direction, right? So it's like it is very important if you can find ways for them to work together so that like you get a little TI and then the TI can kind of web out from that TI and then
Yeah.
come back to the TI and then web out again and come back to the TI. It like works in a nice little dance where that way you don't have to like go 10,000 TE or go TI in the wrong direction. It's like I've tried to find ways to like have that harmony on those opposite functions because it is so powerful when they do align and like how they're iterating and stuff. Like it's so much more efficient and you get to the answer way quicker.
Yeah, dude. Like you know why I went for a walk today to like check out the city, even though I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I wanted to stay in my SI box. I had an epiphany like just like 2 months ago that I was like, my SI gets bigger every time I use SE. Like that's like my epiphany. And I'm like,
Uh
it's only overwhelming because I don't know it. But the moment I know it, it's
yeah.
not overwhelming anymore. Once the SE is in the SI, it's not like if I go back to the city, I think tomorrow or whatever, I'm not gonna be as overwhelmed because it's not SI, it's not SE anymore, it's SI, it's known, right? It's like
Yeah.
with the N9 NE also, right? Like the new pattern is not new anymore once it's in the NI. So you should actually get a lot of
Yeah.
like as much NE as you can. You know what I mean? Actually make your NI bigger, if anything. So
Yeah.
um, so that's kind of like my thought process now. It's like, oh my God, the shadow functions are so important. Like this is
Oh, I
ridiculous,
know.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, and it feels so unnatural because it's a shadow function, right? But it's um, like for example, with the FI and the FE, right? Like, and then the TI and the TE, right? Like the TI person will think, well, we're such assholes if we go up to them and say, okay, let's see what your work. Let's see it. And they're
Hmm.
like, I'm not ready. The hell are you get off me, man. Like
Yeah.
I'm still working it out. But the thing is, if they decide to show you, then you could say, hey, this is not gonna work. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then for you, because like we have FI and we're charging it up and ready for like for you, it's like when you went to a club, right? Now you're ready to
Hmm.
party and shit, right? But like and like have that self-expression, but like the FE person would be like, dude, that's cringe. Maybe like they can give you
Yeah.
like a warning ahead of time. So it's like actually not a bad thing if you think about it from like that perspective. If they're trying to make you like FE at the moment when you're not ready, you're like, okay, you know what? Maybe it's a good time
Yeah.
because I can like at least see where I'm cringe, right? Like at least I
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So um
Well, I noticed that like so for example in like a school environment like middle school or high school like I noticed thinking back of like all the people who used to like bully me on a mild like I was never bullied but like I got shit from some people and I realized a lot of them were FE that were noticing that like I was not fitting in with the like the vibe of the environment. And like they were trying, even though they were young and angsty and aggressive and stuff, like they were it was coming from a good place of like they're trying to get you a little more less weird or a little less weird. And I noticed like my dad, like he's FE savior. I think he's SE FE. And like anytime my hair is like a little bit like weird, he's like, you need to get a haircut. I'm like, I want it to like look bad on purpose because I want to be authentic and look kind of silly. And he's like, that looks, he always tries to keep me a little bit more towards the middle. And I'm like,
yeah.
I think there's a important dance where like you don't want to go too far in that FE because then you just become the same as everybody. But then you don't want to go too far in the FI because everyone will find you weird. No one will want to work with you or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah.
The way I see high school actually, or middle school in your case, it's almost like it's like caveman society almost. Like you get
Yeah.
bullied if you venture off too far in the deep end
Yeah.
or something, right? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So and then the SF is what's most valued, right? So,
Hmm.
like it's almost like a good test to see uh how acceptable your SF is, because there is like
Yeah.
a level where it's like it's not quite like the high status SF, but it's good enough where people will leave you alone. You know what I mean? you know,
Mhm.
because if it's so bad, you're gonna get bullied, right? You know, I'm
Yeah.
SF plus, so I got bullied a lot. But like, I wasn't stupid too. Like I knew it was because I was like out of touch with fashion and
Yeah.
trends and stuff. But like so uh I think as I get older, I'm starting to realize I'm like, oh, the FE is not bad. It's annoying, but only because I'm not like I have FI and I'm waiting for
Mhm.
the right moment to express myself. But
Yeah.
really, I need to be open to like at any given time when the FE springs it on me, I should be ready to at least like try,
Yeah. Like it's been really hard for me because like I have FE as like my blind spot or whatever, and like my masculine FI is super stubborn. So it took that function in particular was the one that took me the longest to like see the value of. And now I'm only just recently, like the last year or two, I'm like, okay, I can really see now like why it's important. I'm like trying to give a little bit in their direction now. It's still very hard because like FI is so stubborn, but like
It is,
I
yeah.
am trying a little bit at least.
Okay, dude. Last topic I want to cover before we wrap this interview. I want to talk about your social type. So you think you're a
Okay.
3, eh? So if you are a 3, that means you have specialist first, flex second,
Mhm.
friends third, and generalists or broad responsibility fourth. That would be your
Yeah.
your stack. And then you would have cognitive dissonance because your blast last and blast activates specialists, right? Like taking in
Yeah.
information and practicing it. And then you would actually have generalist activated, which actually help you get less tidal wave as a result of from that because you're collecting skill sets.
Mhm.
You're not like a typical blind specialist that doesn't know what's going on with like a organization because
Mhm.
you actually have gathered the broad aspect of things,
Yeah.
even though you don't want to. You've done it like
Yeah. Yeah.
and then where you are aligned is like your sleep is activating flex, so that part is aligned. And then you have play third, which is directly tied to your social type, having friends third, right? So
Yeah.
so those parts are aligned in a way. Can you share about the cognitive dissonance first, like that feeling of cognitive dissonance, being blast last, but wanting to specialize and work on your known information?
Yeah, so it's led me to specialize in things that do not require blasting as much because the specialized urge is so strong. I want to devote 10,000 hours to this thing. And if I try to do that with something that involves the blast last all the time, like it's just never ending conflict. And so I've noticed like one of my main lines of work that I've been doing for the last 7 or 8 years now is like trading on markets and stuff like day trading and stuff
Okay.
like that. And like I don't, that doesn't require me to do anything outward at all. Like I just sit there, consume all that, and then I just like click a couple buttons. And like that's the clicking the couple buttons is the only actions I have to do. And but I have done that process in many other areas. And so I noticed like the specialize and the like the threes and the twos eventually they do converge over a long enough time where like the twos are trying to fill like this box and this box and this box and this box all at the same time. They're putting out all the fires at the same time. And I'm trying to put all my effort into this box and then I'll shift to this box 5 years later and then this box 5 years later. And we eventually fill them all up, like if we fast forward like when we're all 60 years old or something. But
Yeah.
um I definitely noticed that like yeah, because I noticed that cognitive dissonance, like I try to avoid situations where I have that dissonance to like I specialize on all these like NF things that like I don't even have to do a lot of blasting for because yeah, it's very tough. But yeah, I've noticed too like the way I see my social type being true the most is specifically on the like the friends and the flex where I feel very double decidery ish about like the give and take with friends. And I immerse myself in some new community of people, try to see who the valuable friends are. I'll acquaint myself to these friends and then I'll always track like, are they helping me? Am I helping them? Like, what's the end game? And then if they're not, if they're not like the right fit, I don't have an issue like leaving the friends behind, so to speak. Whereas like like the twos and fours, I know like they just can't leave people behind. Like it's very hard for them, and it's like it's kind of foreign to me. And like how it's like if they're not helping you, just like just don't have them in your life. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
I think the way Dave described it is the fours have it the hardest for leaving the friends
yeah,
behind, obviously. The twos are a little bit more picky with the friends. However, if that friend got in when they were young and they
Yeah.
didn't, and now they're stuck. So that's kind of like where Dave said it's toxic for number twos, is
Yeah.
those friendship that you've had since you were a kid or like a teenager, right? Or
Hmm.
college. Like you should have dumped them, but because they're in your FI, especially for the FI people, or maybe even with the
Yeah.
emotional connection, it's like, you're like, they got in before I started filtering, like,
Yeah.
um, but I do think that convergence thing that you said is very interesting, because like I am seeing like a lot of number threes becoming business owners and also being promoted to managerial roles because they're so good at their job. So
Yeah.
they do succeed in entrepreneurship. Although like when you become an entrepreneur, you have to scale, and that's where like number threes hate, is like the scaling aspect of things.
Yeah.
And then like the number threes who become managers is like, oh, I don't want to manage people. Like kind of deal,
Yeah.
right? Because I interviewed Lijo, right? She's the number three, and she's like a manager,
Yeah.
right? She's like, you know what? You're an adult. Do your work. Like I'm not.
Hmm.
It's like I don't want to like manage people, right?
I
And
relate. Yeah.
so it's I do find that like irony, and I think like for me as a number two, I've learned the hard lesson in the past when I was in the travel blog and travel YouTube channel space, where I would quickly crank up like a content that was like low quality, and like it never really helped my channel and never helped my blog, like in terms of like growth and whatnot. So when I went into personality trainer, it used to be called ENFP male. um,
Hmm.
I wanted to go with my minimum, which is interviews. And I've
Yeah.
always felt like, oh, I have high play. So that's going to be kind of like how you hack your number three blast last by using consume to
Yeah.
uh, do high quality specialist work, right? So for me, I'm like, oh, I have play savior. So my interviews by default, they're not going to be like the worst thing ever. They're going to be okay.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then later on, like when I learned about YouTubing and how to make it high quality, I started practicing high quality blasting. So I don't know if you've seen my explainer videos, and I really put a lot of
Yeah. I
effort.
have.
I really put like so much effort into it to like make it as infodom as possible. And like I was like, okay, I now learn how difficult it is to be a number three, because the work always takes longer than you think as a number
Oh
three.
yeah.
So like I have empathy now for number twos, in the sense where like if they say they're not done, it's because it's longer than you think. Like to make it
Hmm.
really, really good, it is longer than you think. They're not slacking off. They're perfecting it, and it's a long process. It's like it's what the number twos think the number threes are doing. If it's the time frame that they should be allowed to finish the work should be 2 to 4 times longer than initially what they call it, allocated. And but the end result will definitely produce a higher result as well. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so I think that's where like the twos and threes, I think, kind of like converge. It's like having
Yeah.
empathy for each other's role, essentially. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I notice with ones and fours too, like, you have the ones who just completely forsake the friends. They build their one thing so hard that eventually the tribe and the friends come to them because they've ascended so high. Like everyone wants to be with them. Whereas the fours, like someone like Joe Rogan, he just like talks with the entire tribe. Like he's just building so many friendships, and he just like gets the one status by virtue of like all these, interviews and friends that he's actually had. So it's like I see their convergence too. It's very interesting.
I think they have more pitfalls
Yeah.
though than the twos and
Yeah.
threes, because I
They
feel like for the
probably do.
ones, yes, people are coming to you, but they want something from you. They're not
It
genuine.
is hard. Yeah.
It's not genuine friendship, right? So, or relationship. So I think as like a one, you should definitely like have one or two that you keep in your back pocket, just
Yeah.
to maintain, because those are your genuine friends, right?
Hmm.
And then for number fours, definitely have like an outlet where you could compete, to an extent.
Yeah.
Like Joe Rogan's like the perfect example, because
Yeah.
number one podcaster, number one UFC commentator,
Yeah.
high level comedian. Like
Hmm.
he's like pretty much like number one in a lot of areas,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
All right. So in terms of your demon friends though, I'm
Hmm.
set, like since we've started talking, you've been talking about your friends, and I'm like, oh, you're one of those trees that actually have friends. Because like
Oh yeah.
there's trees I interviewed that has no friends. And I find that like with the number trees, it's so black and white. It's either like there's like trees that realize how important friendship is, and they really value it, and like they
Hmm.
go all in it. And there's trees who are like, I have no clue what to do with this friend thing. You know, it's like, so you're in that camp. I actually like the fact that you're talking about this because a lot of the number threes I've interviewed are in the other camp, like the no
Oh,
friends camp.
okay.
So you're the few threes that I've interviewed, or like the rare, like maybe you're even the first or second one that actually has friends. Can you talk about a little bit about that, where like you realize the value of friendship, and yes, you are willing to ditch friendship that is no longer serving you, but
Mhm.
ultimately you still value friendship.
Yeah, I mean, when I was like a teenager, when I was younger in my 20s, like I was very much of the mind that like I wanted to try to do as much as I can without friends. And like the friends I did have were just meeting like the bare minimum socialization needs I need as a human being, right? But like I think I don't know if it's like part of it being because I'm like a high DE IJ and I have like the blast aspiration of like the tribe wanting to blast them. Like there's just a lot of tribe integration in my goals that I just know intuitively I can't avoid the tribe. And I realized this kind of subconsciously a while ago. And so like it's because so much of everything I want to do in life requires the tribe so much. And I realized like I need to immerse myself in different people, different groups of people and try to make new friends because I need them in like my function, like they're functionally needed for manifesting any vision I have. And so it is kind of like TE practically minded and how I see it. Like I don't romanticize the friendships at all. Like I don't think of it as like, oh, there's this great deep bond and we're just the best friends ever. Like I'm always very like utilitarian about it, but at the same time, like I know how important it is, and like I just learn. It's also kind of just like a demon TE. Like I'm kind of learning over time. Like oh, the tribe, it's like actually not too bad now. Like that's what OP in general has helped me with. Is like oh, I can understand the tribe more. So I actually have more fun talking with like random strangers, and I can see how they work and like test it with my stereotypes that I already have. Like, and so, but yeah, like I would say the reason I have so many friends is just it's a very conscious choice of like I just know this is practical and optimal to do, and maybe sometimes people can sense that I'm trying to like get something out of our friendship. Like it can get rub people the wrong way sometimes, or like they can tell like I'm always bouncing my ideas off them, trying to get them to collaborate in some way, or like I'm using them as like a science experiment, like, oh, let me ask you this
Yeah.
question so that I can develop my theory better. It's like it can annoy them at times, but if I find the right people who are interested in similar things to me, it does work pretty well. And I would say, like, yeah, I am very much like getting better at like making the friends part like not as chaotic. Like I'm not as quick to get rid of people that I feel like aren't helping, and I'm not as quick to like try to thrust all my interests and science experiments on them. But because I don't want to actually get rid of people, like I don't have friends last. Like I really still don't like it that much to get rid of people, but I do still do it if at the end of the day if I need to.
I feel like you have room for growth in this area because I think
Yeah.
friendship from a utilitarian standpoint is a good first step, but
Hmm.
just to have friends to begin with. But I think genuine friendship is very underrated.
Hmm.
Like I was like when you were telling me this stuff, I actually realized that there's two other number threes I've interviewed that has real friends. So one of them was Lijo. So Lijo said she has one real friend that she sees, right? And no, but
Yeah.
it's good because it's like one that she actually has a connection with and does like fun stuff with.
Hmm.
Um, and then the other one is this ISFJ lady that I've interviewed. She's a jumper consume last one, and she has two friends. Like the way she described it is like it's like in a way the way I see it is like a very healthy number three version of friendship. So the way she
Okay. Yeah.
described it is her and her friend they'll see each other twice a year on each other's birthdays. So she'll take out her friend for her friend's birthday, and then her friend will take her out for her birthday. And it's like a
Hmm.
twice a year thing, and it's like great. And they've been doing it for many years, and
Yeah.
it's like the perfect demon friends thing because it's like every 6 months or something, and it's just like it's like the friendship
Yeah.
is there, you still care about each other, but there's like a lot of distance because it's like so there's like so much time in between the next interaction, right?
Yeah.
And then like the other person that she's friends with is kind of like your version, utilitarian. So she has one
Hmm.
for actual genuine bonding, and then one is for utilitarian. So um I think you're missing that genuine FI friendship.
Well, I have it a little bit. So like I do have that kind I do have other friends that I've known over the years that I have tried to be more utilitarian with them, but like the reason I initially met them was not for any practical gains. It was just like, oh, we are all weird in this one little way
I see.
that we kind of align with. And I have actually visited them kind of in this 6 month interval. Like I actually went out to Canada for the eclipse recently that passed through northern America and southern Canada. And I went out there and met with a lot of my friends that I've known online that are more on the actual friends. Like it's kind of hard to like outline the entire landscape of everyone I know in this short interview, but like yeah, like there are people I have I know them and spend time with them more because I just relate to them more and they're just more, but it's still not on the level of like the depth of like you're correct and that I have room to grow still. Like it's still the broad landscape of my friendships, it still heavily leans on like let me what can I get out of it kind of thing. But like um yeah, I'm trying to think like because the thing too is that like it's so blurred with me too, like the utilitarian and the like true passion, true care. Because like I notice how much I can like rationalize and emotionalize the two. So like, oh, they're so practical. It makes me want to be passionate and depth and deep and close. And sometimes the practicality comes first, and I start romanticizing that practicality, and I get closer because of that. And sometimes I meet them because they just relate to me, and then I can discover practicality later. So I noticed that like a lot of my like strongest FI interests in general in life are things I initially didn't value too much, but I realized how practical they were. And my FI like retroactively starts valuing it innately because it was practical. Like it's like chicken and the egg sometimes, where
Yeah.
it seems like the practicality is still always in my mind because like I still have this IJ archetype of like trying to get something done and stuff, but I do notice that it is kind of blurred. It's more blurred than I probably make it out to be because it's hard for me to articulate, obviously, as I said many times. But yeah,
From my perspective, the way I define someone would be your true friend is
mm,
two aspects. One aspect is you can have your pure FI self-expression and
yes,
they totally embrace it. Like they totally
yes,
love you for that. That's the first
hmm
aspect. And then the second aspect is, and then also obviously for them as well, when they have that pure
yeah,
your own version of their expression, and you totally like them for that, right? It's like, you
hmm
want them to keep being themselves, right? And then the second aspect of that, in my opinion, is they truly believe in you, like in terms of like your goals, your passions. They're happy that you're pursuing your goals and
yes,
passions. Like they you can feel from them that like genuinely they are happy for you. With the exception of number one. So if you have a number one friend, they're genuinely like
yeah,
upset that you're beating them. And that's in a way that's almost like okay. Because like
yeah,
that's just how number ones are. And then I would take it as a compliment because
yeah,
they're threatening their ego, right? Because like number one is always
exactly.
competing, right? So it's like so that's why I put the exception to the rule for that, But so that's how I would define it. And if you can find friends like that, I think you've made genuine friendships for life, you know.
I
Uh
think you're correct. Like a lot of my friends that I know and are close to more for the FI relation to, like a lot of them are actually masculine TI, which is a lot why I have so much experience with them. And so they
yeah,
believe in me. They believe in me more conceptually, but like they have a hard time believing in like the pure TE of what I'm doing. Like that's the part of them that they don't quite believe in as much because they can't see the like chain of logic of like how is what you're trying to do going to actually work. That doesn't make sense. But like I definitely we definitely have at least some level of like it's not like as deep maybe as I would like it to be, but there is a non-trivial belief that we have in each other. And like I think the only reason it isn't deeper is just kind of a misunderstanding of or a lack of understanding a relation of like how our vastly disparate modes of thinking act. Like I've noticed that for sure. But in like in realms that don't involve logic or thought at all, we almost always do have that kind of supporting each other and happy for each other. Like it is very, yeah, I would say we have that. But yeah, it's like, it's very nuanced for sure.
So that means you also have room for growth for your TE then,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
you
I need
know
to actually, yeah.
your TE is honed in when your TI friend looks at you and say you're onto something, like
Yes.
that is like
Yes.
the biggest compliment the TI can give you, right?
Yes.
It's not the FE shit that they're doing. It's like when the TI recognize like you're doing something right. Like that's like the,
Yeah.
the keyword right. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
for example, like what my buddy, he's an ISTP, right? He was looking at my YouTube stuff, and like I have another friend who's an ESFJ who's like a number one, who's like up, like kind of like couldn't seem last, like looking at my YouTube stuff. He's like, "What is this YouTube shit?" Right? And then like
Yeah.
and then my friend who's an ISTP, he was looking at my YouTube stuff, right? And he paused for a second, and then like he looked at my ESFJ friend and looked at me. He's like, "If I'm not doing what I'm doing right now, I would be doing what Kendrick's doing, because this is the right
Mm.
this is the right path." And I'm like, "Oh, there we go. I heard from a TI lead TI guy, right?" So it's like, for me that's like validation. That's like, oh, like the TI person recognizes this is the right path. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway, I will say, like, whenever they do say, very rarely, that I am doing something crazy that they can tell is like working and like TI align, like it is super rewarding because like I'm
yeah,
so used to them just like saying, "What are you doing?" But
yeah.
yeah, because like I think both like yeah, I think the other so one of them is a ENTP with double masculine sleep. So he's very ST oriented, and the other one is an ISTP. So he's also very ST oriented. And so like the NF part of it too is also makes it hard for them to see sometimes. So it's
Right.
like the NF versus ST, but also that masculine TI versus TE. So it's like double like hard for them to see sometimes and hard for me to see them sometimes. But yeah, like we're getting better for sure. Like it's as we mature, like in over time, like the real world becomes more like you become more willing to work with the world and compromise as you get older. And like, okay, maybe these like super narrow introverted function things aren't like aligned properly, or maybe these super extroverted function things are not aligned enough. And it's like we're getting closer. Like I definitely notice an arc of like getting closer to like seeing each other on the right path and stuff. And so I'm optimistic in that sense for sure.
So last two things, and then we'll wrap it up. The first one is, it's just a comment. Is you're lucky you have NF and ST in your first three animals, because you would be a crazy nuthead if you
Yeah.
didn't have the
Yeah.
ST to balance your NF. Especially if you have like ISTP friends, like they'll
Mm,
just who have like NF last, like they'll just think you're a crazy nuthead, because like
yep.
a lot of ISTPs don't respect NF. Although like the Julian Blanc guy, I don't know if you've heard of him. He he's I think Dave said he's like the ultimate ISTP or something, because he's the ISTP that can double decide apparently. Um
Oh,
yeah, that's why he's like the ultimate ISTP. He's like, this guy knows something that other ISTPs doesn't know, like
yeah.
so I would recommend you watch this video. He has like an emotional ladder thing. I think your FI would like it. But anyways,
Okay. Okay.
I'll email you the link after our chat. And like um yeah, so you're lucky in that aspect. And then the last thing I want to say before we wrap this up is, did we not talk about something that you wanted to bring up in this interview? Like that's something that you personally want some people to know about you, or something that we just didn't bring up? Because sometimes I do interviews and people are like, "Oh, you didn't ask me about this question." I feel like Rob. I'm like, okay, okay. So from now on, I asked like my person I'm interviewing, did we not cover something that you wanted to be covered?
I
This is
can't
your
say is it like there it would take 100 hours to like for to reach the full depth of any person, right?
Sure.
And so I feel that way with myself too. So like I'm totally fine. Like with
Okay.
I can't say there's anything particular. I would say like maybe the one thing is that like I kind of like to classify myself, or I see myself a lot as like I have a lot of like paradox energy. I feel like where because of like the weird double masculine glass lizard thing, like I feel like that's what makes me the most unique in a good and bad way. It's just that like I seem to possess and like embody so many contradictory things, and I like playing with that and like the contrast and of those two things and
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, that's just like the NF vibe of who I am, I guess.
I don't see it as NF. I see it as flex. That's you flexing that.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess that's the one thing I like to. I don't like to flex too much unless I really know that it's like what makes me me. I don't like people that give me praise when I know I'm not really good at it. But yeah, I do feel like I'm pretty good at that, so I like flexing it.
Yeah, it sounds like you're flexing your inner rebellion self. Like you have like
Yeah,
EP and you're rebelling. It's like, I know what looks good, but I'm purposely not gonna do it, because like,
yeah, yeah,
it's like you're like a rebel. Like the it's like you're like, I'm an IJ. but I'm not gonna be like an IJ, you know, like kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna be that IJ that embraces EP kind of deal, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
All right, dude. Thanks for reaching out. This was a fun interview, and
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
yeah, and I'll send you the link. Take care, dude.
All right. Thanks, man. See you later.